Good afternoon. Well, as you see, the title that was read and it was in the schedule is different, a bit different from this, in the sense that it doesn't have the HPSG analysis, and I can explain why is that. The thing is that when I submitted my abstract, I had a different theory, and this developed into a almost new theory, which is more widely covers the data we have. So I preferred to cover more data with my theory, and currently I'm working on developing an HPSG analysis for it, and I'm in the middle of it, so I didn't include it in my presentation today. Is there a clicker here, or I should just reuse this? My title today is The Distribution of Pronominal Enclitics in Colloquial Persian, and my focus is on the quirky case of psych predicates or psychological predicates. Before going into the data and my analysis, I want to go over some basic properties of Persian, which you might already know, but it's just to refresh your mind. Persian is underlyingly an SOV language, but this word order is not rigid because Persian has scrambling, and you can have all sorts of word order. There is regular subject-verb agreement in Persian, and it's a prodrop language. This is the paradigm of pronominal enclitics in Persian, which are basically used for oblique functions. So it can be used for realizing different kinds of objects: direct object, indirect object, object of preposition, and genitive. Here are some of our data. If you can see in the English translations, the experiencer is the subject, and these are all psych verbs. So they all are verbs of emotion here. But if you compare it to the Persian data, you can see that there is no, first of all, there is no overt full form pronoun, which, well, we can say that Persian is a prodrop language, but if in that case, why is the verb in third person singular? Because we said Persian has regular subject-verb agreement. And on the other hand, you can see that there is a pronominal enclitic hosted by a nominal element that is coreferential with the subject that we have as the experiencer we have in the English translations. So we want to see what's the deal here. These are some more data that you have in your handouts. You can see that the constructions are complete without the part that comes before the nominal element with a pronominal clitic, but that just adds to the sentence. The first and last sentence here are using the regular pattern, syntactic pattern of Persian, and we have an accusative object that in the second example, you see that the accusative object has been put into a prepositional form. And in the first one, the experiencer I has regular subject-verb agreement in the Persian form. But in the second one, you see that the experiencer is not agreeing with the verb. And the same deal is happens with the next example. So we are studying the constructions that we don't have subject-verb agreement in Persian. So you see that in all these examples, the verb is just third-person singular agreement, no matter what is the experiencer. And also, in all of these cases, we see the presence of the pronominal enclitic is obligatory. We cannot, if we omit that, the sentence is just ungrammatical. And I said that the pronominal enclitic paradigm are oblique form, so they cannot function as a subject. So if the experiencer is the subject of the sentence, then why is an oblique form enclitic is substituting them? So what's the deal here? Previous research on this topic have tackled some multiple questions. A lot of them are in the morphosyntax, and some of them are in semantics. First of all, there are many arguments whether these verbs are compound verbs or not, because Persian has a lot of compound verbs. Most of Persian verbs are compound, actually. So some of linguists say that these are compound verbs, and the nominal element with the light verb are forming a compound verb. But some others argue that this is not a compound verb. And here in this research, I follow those who say it's not a compound verb. And I will show why. So what is the subject in these kind of constructions? This is another question that should be tackled. And many have talked about it. Some say that since Persian is a pro-drop language, there is underlyingly a subject and it's just dropped. Some say that the nominal part is the subject, and there is really no agreement on this topic. And the other thing is the agreement idiosyncrasy, that the experiencer, that the verb is never agreeing with the experiencer. And the other thing is the function of pronominal enclitics, which could be the first thing I should focus on in this research. And the other thing is the whole semantics of these constructions. So they say this is the part that most of the past research agree on, and they believe that these are all psychological predicates. According to Tsunoda in 1985, state verbs can be divided into 4 categories: verbs of knowledge, verbs of feeling, verbs of relation, and verbs of ability. William Croft believes that these mental predicates pose difficulties for theories of argument linking, because there are various ways to link the experiencer with the stimulus. So we have in the idiosyncratic syntactic pattern that I am studying, we have verbs of knowledge like forgetting, verbs of feeling like being pleased, verbs of relation like something is small for me or something is big for me, but there is no verbs of ability that could be realized with such syntactic pattern. But also there are some data in Persian that use this kind of sort of pattern, syntactic pattern, but are not accounted for by previous research. And this is why I came up with this new theory that I'm going to show. And these data are reciprocal events. So we see in reciprocal events that the event as a noun nominal part, comes as the first element of the sentence. The verb is again in third-person singular agreement, and there is a pronominal clitic hosted by the nominal element, which indicates those people who are involved in the reciprocal event. So I argue that the transitive the logical form for these constructions are transitive. So there has been in the psychological predicates, there has been experience and stimulus, and in the reciprocal events, there has been agent and patient. But when we in the psychological predicates, we want to just defocus the stimulus and focus on what is happening to the experiencer. So we just demote the stimulus and keep the experiencer. And the deal with the reciprocal predicates is that when we want to defocus the agent and say that this event, this reciprocal event just happened between two people, we change the form of normal syntactic pattern to this kind of pattern and use this construction to show that, to show the non-volitionality of the event. Tsunoda again says that what matters in the intransitive forms is the affectedness of the patient. So it's not the volitionality of the agent that is important, and this results in demoting the stimulus and the agent. I argue that this is an operation of decausativization. In the psych predicates, we have subject-experiencer verbs with stimulus and experiencer arguments. So if we want to just demote the cause, stimulus is the cause, and we demote it. And in the theme on accusative verbs, we have agent as the cause and patient as the theme. So we decausativize it by omitting the agent. And the operation of decausativization is a type of valence reduction. So the subject is demoted and the object is promoted. These are some verbs of, well, say light verbs that are used in these constructions. And I have categorized them based on the meaning they give to the sentence. But I think we have no time here to go over them one by one. So my argument about the nature of the verb, whether they are compound verb or not, is that, well, there is a test of compound verbs that if we apply it to the current data, we see that they cannot form gerundive nominal elements. So and there are also others that are argued by previous literature, but I just don't have time here to go over all of them. So I just say that they are not compound verbs. And by just one example of failing the test. These are in fact complex predicates. And Dabir Muqaddam says that in the subject verbs, the verb is in fact decomposed into a nominal state, which is a theme in these sentences, and a light verb. And in the theme on accusative verbs, which are reciprocal events, this kind of construction can be realized only in that the transitive form use compound verb itself. So a transitive compound form should be used in order for it to be changed to intransitive constructions in complex predicate that we are talking about. So the light verbs here are semantically bleached. They are not totally semantically vacuous, as some linguists suggest. They are metaphorically extended, as again Dabir suggests, meaning that they have some metaphorical relation with the experiencer, and it contains TAM features, which is tense and aspect and mood. So the light verb construction we have here consists of a light verb and a nominal element, in which the nominal element is in fact a verbal noun. So it has some verbal behavior properties in it. And this is how I'm gonna develop my HPSG account. I'm gonna use this mixed properties of the verbal noun to say that, in fact, it's the verbal noun, not the verb, that is determining the argument structure of the sentence. And in fact, the verbal noun is a complement of the light verb. The verbal noun has some frozen effects, which means it doesn't undergo some processes like relativization, scrambling, clefting, and topicalization, which are all true about this, the nominal verbal noun in this construction. So my analysis, according to what I said, is that the verbal noun, which is the state or the non-volitional event that is occurring to someone, is the subject of the sentence. So we have actually regular subject-verb agreement if we take that as the subject of the sentence. And there are some selectional restrictions on what internal arguments we can choose, and it's that the experiencer, well, should be plus animate, and it should be also minus volition, meaning that, well, as I said, we defocus the agent, so it means that we want to imply that there has been no intention in that event or that state. And the enclitic, I argue that is the object to whom the state or event is occurring. So I didn't go over all the data that I analyzed, but if we go over there, we see that it's all the English translation of all these constructions is that a state is occurring to someone or something is happening to someone. So this someone will be the object of the sentence. And there is an optional DP which is coreferential with the pronominal enclitic, and this is at the topic of the sentence, in fact, because first of all, it's not obligatory, the presence, and when it's there, it just adds to the focus. It's just add to the yeah. It means that we want to focus on this DP, or add more rather than just the 5 features of the DP. And this construction is in fact a productive construction in Persian. We see very novel forms that use this construction. Like we have various kinds of verbal noun that could be, that even might not be nouns. Like here we have a janet miad, which A is evocative exclamation, and John means dear. So a John is actually an exclamation, but you use it as a nominal element. Added to a enclitic is added to it, and then the verb, and altogether it means you are in the mood for endearing. And these are the paradigm of all the data I had in my corpus that based on the verbal noun. The first column are the verbal nouns, and I have categorized them based on what light verb they use, and then what non-core arguments they can take possibly, and whether there are some constraints on time features of verb, and whether there are constraints on the choice of pronominal enclitic. And these are very useful in the HPSG account I will be coming up with. Well, here I propose that the shared feature among all these constructions is that they are all non-volitional events, and there is something happening to an affected patient, which is the object. And the subject in these elements is the verbal noun, which shows some verbal feature. This verbal noun determines the argument structure, as I said. So there is clearly a regular agreement pattern in this construction. And as I said, I'm still in the process of developing the HPSG account for this construction. Yep, that's it. Mm-hmm.
Which corpus did you use?
Spoken corpus was developed by me, yeah, in 6 months. So I'm using that.
Was it conversational?
Yes, spoken, yeah. Mm-hmm.
I was just thinking about all these writing, and well, at first I was trying to change them to the formal version and see what's going on there, and I realized that sometimes, yes, there are like accusatives, sometimes there is a prepositional phrase or something going on, and I agree that the subject in these cases is like the verb you were talking about, but that is the case when we have actually the subject is dropped. But sometimes we say that when you say, okay, sardam shud or sardame, means I feel
cold.
I feel cold. But sometimes you say man sardam.
Then you put I said that it would be the topic of the sentence in my analysis.
So you consider that as topic, and then that has nothing to do with.
Yeah, it's just co-referential with the enclitic that is obligatory.
Right.
And the sentence is a fully fledged sentence and grammatical and complete without that DP.
All right.
In that case, it's nominative, like man.
Man, yes, it's full form pronoun.
In the other cases where you don't want to have
Enclitic.
normally topic for us.
Right.
Why should topic should sometimes?
The topic is not oblique. Oh, that's not the subject. That's not agreeing with the enclitic. That was the object in the yeah.
So you put a subject in this sentence as it's always going to be man.
Yes.
So you mentioned that you think the argument structure properties come from this verbal noun, some verbal properties that they have.
Yes.
How does that work for something like small? It's small for me.
Well, small could
Or let me ask a different question. What are the verbal properties? There's independent
No, it's a
facts
small
that
just
illustrate that these are
among the in the categorization I propose, not I, Tsunada proposed. It's in the verbs of relation. So small is an adjective, and it's a relative adjective. So something could be small with respect to something else. And that could induce the meaning of the verb, I mean the whole sentence. If we, if we...
What about laziness?
Laziness? What is laziness is...
To me?
Again, the...
Somebody else?
Laziness... Oh, are you...
Again, it's about the argument structure, the relationship between these elements in subject position determining the argument structure. Really. You know, I guess there's two ways to ask this question. What is about the elements themselves, and do you have other cases of subjects and other constructions that are determining the argument structure of the whole predicate?
This argument I took from an article which is on the light verbs on Korean, and this is the argument they're using, and it's not yet fixed. So this is what I'm thinking it could be, because obviously it's not about the light verb, because each verbal noun could be used with different light verbs, and yeah. Thank you.